So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. This is Jen, and today I am talking to Mark Steffi from First Command, who is sharing some great financial and money-saving tips for military families, both during this time of pandemic and beyond. So here is a little bit about Mark. Mark Steffi is the president and CEO of First Command. He joined First Command in March of 2010. In this position, Mark leads the company on a number of important strategic priorities, including the continuous improvement of the First Command client experience, focusing on military engagement, the continuing adaptation to a rapidly evolving digital world, and leadership development. Before joining First Command, Mark served in a number of leadership roles with major companies in the financial services industry. Mark earned a Bachelor of Science degree in finance from the University of Illinois, graduating with high honors. He holds Series 7, 8, 23, 63, and 65 securities registrations, plus life and health insurance licenses. So welcome to Mark. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this important topic for military families.
Thanks for having me, Jen. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of great information for our military spouses and families. And we were talking about many younger military families, especially, already have financial worries. And of course, this has been compounded lately for those whose spouse was furloughed or let go from their jobs during this pandemic. And even though it seems like we'll be heading out of the quarantine in stages in the near future, it is going to take some time for our country and even individuals to recover financially. So I'm hoping you can share some practical financial tips that military families could use during this unprecedented time.
Yeah, there are a number of financial tips that we could share, and they're all pretty basic and fundamental, but sometimes you just need a prompt, I think, to think of them. I mean, one of the things we would encourage people to do is, now especially, it's a great time to sit down with your spouse and review your budget. Figure out what your expenses really are, determine how you're going to track everything and stay on top of your weekly expenses. And it's just one of those things where I think if you spend a little bit more time on it, you'll find ways to save money that you might not have thought of otherwise. So
what are some examples you could give for that kind of thing?
Some of the specifics would be, and this is going to sound obvious probably, but gas is a whole lot cheaper now. So, you're not spending as much money on gas. There aren't too many places to go either. So people are driving less. So don't forget about factoring that into your monthly budget. Dining out isn't so much an option anymore, except, the carry out, and just be thoughtful about, how much you're going out to eat or going out to get food as opposed to making it at home. A lot of entertainment, going to movies and things like that. People just even going out for a drink. It's not so easy to do that anymore. And I would look for those savings. There's a lot of, getting haircuts or going to the nail salon, something like that. Those things aren't available as much. And go ahead and capture those. And now when you can't do those things, you can ask yourselves, when you do have the opportunities, when those things start opening back up, did we really need some of those things? And if we were able to do without them for a few weeks or a couple of months, how much of these things are necessities and how many of these things, do we have to have as the economy opens back up? One other thing I would encourage people to do, and this actually happened to us as well, is, a lot of people have gym memberships or other subscriptions that they're signed up for. And just because you're not going to the gym and it's not open doesn't mean they're not still charging you on a monthly basis.
Right.
Go through your credit card statement. You might remember that you've signed up for a few things that you don't use nearly as much of as you used to, or you're not able to use them now. And I'd cancel those subscriptions until you have a chance to, determine whether you really need them, or until those gyms or those other facilities open back up where you really have a chance to take advantage of whatever services you're buying.
Yeah, you start to realize what you really can live without. You're forced to, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And apparently it's a whole lot less than what we were living on.
Right. That's so true. Well, I know for my husband and I, we went to a financial planner back when we were in our mid-20s, and I kind of thought, we don't have any extra money.
Right.
And, it seemed something almost like a luxury. And so for maybe some of our younger families listening who may not be familiar with what financial planning is, how would you describe that in a nutshell?
Maybe the best analogy I could give you is if you were going to drive from wherever your hometown is or wherever you live to some other location, I don't think anybody just jumps in a car, points the car in a certain direction and says, maybe one day we'll get there, right? I think no matter, even if you're going to a place you've never been, even in the local area, most people are going to go onto their phones now and hit maps or Waze or something like that. And they're going to figure out what's the best path to get me from where I am right now to where I want to be, or where I'm trying to go, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, a financial plan is exactly that. I need to sit down and get a good assessment of where I am today. I really want to figure out, where do I want to be 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now? What are my hopes, dreams, aspirations? What are we really trying to accomplish? How much risk am I willing to take in order to get there? And the financial plan is the map that gets you from where you are today to where you're trying to be 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now.
And it could be something so simple as just putting away $50 a month. Like, that's how we started long time ago.
Absolutely right. It absolutely could. I mean, and I think where we're especially concerned for military families is that there's this underlying, almost this immediate assumption of, I can't afford a financial planner, or we don't have enough money to see a financial planner, or worse, our finances are kind of a mess and we've got a lot of credit card debt and I'm kind of embarrassed to go see a financial planner. And at First Command, we're really trying to take away all those issues. We don't charge active duty military families for financial planning, producing the financial plan for them. We wanted to eliminate that barrier to entry. So we stopped charging for that several years ago.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really been a big win for our military families. You don't have to have a certain asset level to start with us. And there are a lot of companies out there you need to have maybe $50,000 or $250,000 to become a client. We have no minimum account size.
That's good.
Yeah. And as you just said, Jen, a lot of our families do start with $50 a month or $100 a month into a savings account. Or I'll be honest with you, a lot of times what we find is they don't have the money to start with a $50 a month investment plan because they might have $5 or $10 or $15,000 in credit card debt, and they're trying to figure out a way to pay that off. And a lot of times we'll help them refinance that high interest rate credit card debt into a much lower interest rate loan. And that makes it easier not only to pay off that loan and to pay down those credit card bills, but then you, through the money you're saving in that interest expense, you can actually start applying that savings not only to paying down your debt, but also to start putting money away, even as you said, $50 a month into an investment plan. So we've got 62 years of dealing with military families, and we understand all those issues and all those concerns about, can I afford it? Do I have enough money? What if my finances are a little bit of a mess? That's exactly why this company was created, is to help military families through those issues.
Well, that's so great. I mean, you don't have to have a ton of money. You can be in debt, and it sounds like you guys will help them get on track.
Absolutely.
Maybe they were just kind of floundering and really don't know how to handle that. And that's such a great service. I'm assuming there's a lot of differences between military financial planning versus civilian, more than just maybe not having the cash flow, but also, just the different stages of military life, younger, mid-career, or facing retirement. Maybe you can talk about how military families can stay on track with their long-term goals, and how do you guys help with that?
Yeah, there's you said a mouthful there. I was
going to say that was a loaded question, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was a lot.
There's a big difference, I think, between the civilians and military families. The similarities, whether you're a civilian family or a military family, you still want to get started on this as soon as you can, because the biggest asset you have is really the time that you put towards your plan. The earlier you get started, the more opportunity, the more time you have to have that plan grow and to achieve the goals that you've laid out in your financial plan. The biggest difference between civilian plans and military plans, probably twofold. The first difference would be the ones we just talked about. There's this underlying assumption of, I can't afford it, I don't have enough money, and so on. The other one is, civilians don't have the type of extensive benefits that military families do. And one of the things I'm proudest about with First Command is that 80% of our advisors are former military or military spouses. So they understand the lifestyle and they understand the benefits inside and out. And I would argue that most folks in the military don't fully understand their benefits, and therefore they're not getting the full benefit of what's offered to them. and we really help them work those benefits into the plan to ensure that they're getting everything that they are rightfully entitled to.
Oh, that's good.
So we don't want to leave those opportunities on the table. We really want to be as comprehensive as we can. And then in terms of the other part of your question, I think was staying on track.
Right.
This market is a great example. If you'd have built your financial plan at the beginning of January and here we are in April, I mean, the world has literally changed in 90 days. And plans, if you don't stay on top of them, can get outdated. And the biggest thing for us is, you should not only develop your plan, but you should meet with your financial planner on some sort of regular or consistent basis. And just because the market went down doesn't mean suddenly you have to make a world of changes with your plan, but you might want to get updated to see, how it's affected it. And I'm a big believer, these markets will recover, they'll move back higher at some point. When exactly that's going to happen, none of us knows. But market corrections over time tend to historically always take care of themselves. The biggest issue we have seen with military families, it's not the market really that's our biggest concern. It's what we call consumer behavior. And we sometimes joke about this, but we think our biggest competitors sometimes are Best Buy and Harley Davidson and you pick the auto company, where we're taking this discretionary money and going out and spending it on things that maybe they're nice to have, but they don't have, we don't have to have them. Instead of buying that new truck or car, maybe a used one would have been okay.
Right.
Do I need the newest flat screen TV, or is the one that we have, could that last a couple more years? And so one of the things we really coach folks on is changing their behavior, is to really try to, as we said earlier, go through your budget. And if you comb through that budget with a professional, you're going to find money that you didn't realize was there. And that money can be put towards a plan and not really impact someone's standard of living along the way. It's just a matter of choosing your priorities and changing your behaviors in order to give you the greatest chance of achieving the goals you set out in your financial plan.
Well, and speaking of the stimulus checks coming in, I think a lot of people see that as, okay, I'm trying to help the economy. So I'm going to go maybe buy something I don't really need. And so what would be your best advice for if you're getting one of those checks?
We have this old saying that probably goes back almost to the founding of the company. And it's two things, really. It's pay yourself first and live on less than you earn. And what we mean by that is, pay yourself first. Whenever you get money, scrape away what you need to put towards your investment plan or your savings plan, or if you have life insurance, make sure you've got that money to pay and maintain your life insurance policies, and then take the rest. And usually that's a number that we use kind of as a rule of thumb in the aggregate of savings, investment, and insurance. That's about 20%. And we try to get folks to think about living off of the 80%. That way, when a time like this hits, when we go through an economic turn down and unfortunately people are losing their jobs, is people have the money tucked away that they need to weather these storms until things get back to, whatever version of normal we're going to be dealing with. But if you're spending more than you earn, you're working yourself deeper into credit card debt, typically. And so we really try to get people to understand how much they're making, scrape a certain amount of money off for their overall portfolio, and to live off the difference.
Well, and that applies to if you're living in a place where you're getting the cost of living allowance, or, your spouse is deployed and you're getting that extra hazardous duty pay. I mean, there's bonuses, all those things. So if you can take a look at them that way, like you just described, even for that sort of thing, because those are not permanent things that you're going to always have.
Absolutely. And too often we see people, they earn that extra money and they start spending that money and they get used to living at that level. And so when those extra payments go away and they don't have them, it's really hard to adjust your standard of living at that point. Whereas, as you said, Jen, if you never had it in the first place, and as you start to receive those payments, if you start tucking those away into your financial plan, not only you're going to grow your plan, but you will not have upwardly adjusted your standard of living and put yourself in a tougher spot.
Well, it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is hard to do.
And
as much as we want people supporting the economy, the best thing to do is take care of yourself and your family first and put the economy second.
That's really good advice. Well, I know that you mentioned that First Command has career opportunities for military spouses, so I wanted to make sure we had time to talk about that.
Absolutely.
If a military spouse was looking for a career with First Command, would they need a certain type of background or training? And what are they looking at? What sorts of career is it?
What I often tell people is that the two things you need to become a successful advisor at First Command is you've got to love the military and you've got to have a great work ethic. And that's one of the reasons we're so excited about hiring military spouses is what we find is they tend to be highly educated. Many of them have advanced degrees. They're incredibly hardworking. They're incredibly resilient. I mean, obviously, many of them have to operate almost as a single parent when their spouse gets deployed. Mm-hmm. Not telling you guys anything you don't know, but high rates of unemployment and underemployment amongst military families. And what we find is, military spouses tend to be the ones making the financial decisions for their families already. So they're used to having to deal with those issues and they're used to having to make those decisions and carry the family. And so as military spouses look more and more for careers, not just a job that I can get at this duty station and another job at another duty station, but I want a career of my own, a career that I can grow, a career that can move with me as we PCS. We do exactly that at First Command. So you don't have to have a finance degree or anything like that. Mm-hmm. If you come in with a love of the military and you're willing to work hard to go out and help these families get on a path to financial success, we can train you in pretty much everything else you're going to need to know. And we've got 180 offices around the world. Most of them are near a military installation. So almost anywhere where you're going to find yourself living if you're in the military, we've probably got an office pretty close by.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm assuming probably a lot of them are working from home right now. I'm kind of
we're all working from home right now. We've got a few face-to-face appointments going on in places where they don't have too many infections, but we've got almost all of our home office employees working remotely now, and I know our advisors are using the heck out of Zoom these days.
Oh yeah. Well, that's awesome. So we will have a link for spouses to find out more about potential careers with First Command and all the information we've talked about today. So as we're looking to close out, Mark, did you have anything else to add?
I think the one thing I would add is not to be redundant, but to go back and remind folks, look, this is a tough time, right? I mean, it's tough enough with the challenges of a military lifestyle to find the time to sit down and build a financial plan and stick to it. And lately, with everything else that's been going on in the world, I think that's got even tougher. But don't allow that to be an excuse. Don't let the world's economy be an excuse not to get yourself and your family on a plan to financial success. Don't let things like, I can't afford it, or I don't have enough money, or maybe my finances don't look so pretty right now. Don't let those things be deterrents to doing the right thing financially for you and your families. Find a professional, someone that you can trust, someone that's a fiduciary that can sit down with you and help you work through these issues, because they're not easy. Mm-hmm. And most folks don't have the expertise to do this themselves. So find that professional that you can trust. And there are people that are more than happy to take care of military families. And First Command obviously is one of those companies, but not doing something is going to put you in a worse position. This is something that you can have an impact on. And it's funny, we were in a discussion the other day, and one of the things somebody said is this is like another battle. This is a financial battle. And I don't know a military person that steps away from taking on a challenge. This is just one of those battles or challenges that you need to take head on. Mm-hmm. And it's a battle that you can win. And we'd love to help you, win this battle.
It's definitely a defining time for everybody, not just military families, but such a historic time. It's going to be interesting to see how this all turns out. But I think that is such good advice and very practical too for our military families right now. So I really appreciate you joining me today, giving us some great information, Mark.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. And listeners, you guys can learn more about First Command at firstcommand.com. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also more about Mark on LinkedIn. And as always, I will include these links in the show notes. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode and came away with some practical tips that you can use right now and even later on in your financial journey.